Well, welcome to the Media Roundtable, where we go deep into the business of creator media and the ecosystem that surrounds it. We really do this in service of the brands that support it. But we get into the whole business of it, including some of its friends in the audio world. I'm Dan Granger. I'm the CEO of Oxford Road. And today I'm joined by an old friend who has a really interesting story, because you're kind of a hybrid of a media personality as we think about it now, because you really you are someone who embodies true journalism, the true spirit of what it means to be like a newsman, a proper purveyor of news content, who has also adapted to the new world of kind of influencer and, creator content. And you've managed to kind of find the best of both worlds. And so I am, of course, joined by the great and powerful Mosheh Oinounou, my friend Mosheh.
I'll take great. I wish more powerful.
Who we're working on it.
Yes.
He's got, well, let me tell you how powerful this man is. He's got over 1 million active weekly consumers listen to his program. He was, I believe, the youngest executive producer that CBS has ever turned out. We're going to talk about CBS in a minute.
Sure.
You have won every type of accolade you can win, from an Emmy to a Murrow to a Webby. So you've really crossed over and
I'm still trying to get EGOT status. So Tony and Oscars have eluded me thus far.
We'll see. Yeah, Mo News, the Broadway, the musical is going to be where we get you a little bit closer. But I mean, you really have done it on both sides of this thing, and you're young enough, I think, to know how to have adapted to the new world, but you're seasoned enough as a professional to still remembered what it was like before all of this, right? So it's an interesting place to be, and it's not our first time having a conversation on this podcast. I guess first thing I would ask you is, in the last couple of years since we last had you on, what has changed for you in the media?
I think a few things. I think the conversations we've had over time, Dan, like, we've realized where the world was going. We saw where the consumers were going. Yeah. We saw how people want to take in their content. I think what has really transpired over the couple of years since the last time we did this podcast is, I think, legacy institutions have finally gotten their heads around things, right? Like, now, is it too little too late? We'll find out. But ultimately, I think that's one of the things that I started to see on, like, Instagram and TikTok. My old former colleagues from places like CBS and Fox and other, putting their phone to their face and, describing what's going on in 60 seconds. So you saw sort of a realization on the part of legacy institutions and reporters and producers that they need to start to adapt their content and create content on those platforms. One of the other things I think I've seen increasingly in the past couple of years, and it's certainly, you can hear it when you listen to our podcast, you see our Instagram feed, is Fortune 50 companies start to embrace this world. Understand that it's not enough for them anymore to get a segment on the Today Show or a piece in the New York Times. That they need to reach audiences, when I say younger audiences, under the age of 65. They're all consuming on these new platforms. So how are they building interesting brand partnerships, sponsored content, all variety of things? And we're seeing it, we have partnerships now at Mo News with companies like Target and Procter & Gamble and Amazon and NVIDIA, who just a few years ago, there would have been a lot more reluctance on the part of those brands to get on it. But then, so that's the positive, right? There's the larger trend lines. I think the other thing that is increasingly concerning is that we've been talking for a few years about distrust in the media. Yeah. And distrust in institutions. I think it's only gotten worse. We're recording this, Dan, not even 48 hours removed from that attack on the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Which it sounds like you were not at, but that was cut it a little close on that one?
Yeah, I mean, for once, it's funny. I've attended that dinner more than a dozen times. I attended it while Bush was president, while Obama was president. Yeah. While Trump was president the first time, I didn't attend it. Biden. So I've seen it through the years at that Washington Hilton. Same ballroom. I mean, I could draw you a picture right now of the route that you take. And frankly, we should be very thankful that this guy wasn't sharp enough to really do some real recon, because he could have done some real damage.
Yeah.
There's all these pre-parties at the hotel, by the way, that like have no magnetometers, and all the notables, including cabinet secretaries, attend. Like, and so if he just asked around or whatever, like, it's actually pretty scary in retrospect how sort of blasé the security has been for years, to sort of taking the situation for granted. But the point in me bringing it up was that, well, first of all, I skipped it because I was headed back to New York, my wife's third trimester, and I was like, oh, these dinners are the same. It turned out they're not all the
Except they're
same.
not.
Except 2026.
Yeah.
Different
And
than
they
the
had a
previous
mentalist.
ones. They had O's, The Mentalist. I was there for like the Colbert year with Bush and all the various years, but where they used to have comedians. But within minutes of posting that something had happened, minutes, like less than 10 minutes, I'd posted our first video on a Mo'New's Instagram feed, like, hey, this is what's going down. Staged.
Oh, really?
Fake. Staged. And these are people
This
writing
is in your comments.
in my comments,
Which
people
is
who
not
follow our
even, that's
account.
so interesting because it's not surprising to hear that that's online.
Correct.
It's surprising that anybody who would bother to follow you would engage in
Normies,
that
as we
venue,
refer to
right?
them, news normies.
Right.
Right? Like, people are always going to have theories over everything. Like, I've been fighting with the moon landing denialists for several weeks now.
Sure.
That actually was a great piece of
Oh,
content for us.
it's a new...
About 1 out of 5 Americans don't believe we landed on the moon. But it became much louder in recent weeks as Artemis 2 went around the moon
Yes.
to sort of revive the debate. Wait, what do you mean going back to the moon? We never landed on the moon.
And I wonder if these same 1 out of 5 are the same that that guarantee that aliens are real. Aliens, yes, but us being
like,
aliens elsewhere,
go
not
through the
possible.
greatest hits. 9/11, moon landing. The flat earthers have been quiet of late, but anyway, my point in the weekend thing and getting to the sort of concern I have to take this to a serious note for a second is that it's not just people you would expect to have theories, like the uncle that you avoid at Thanksgiving.
Right.
It's perfectly what you thought are like rational, normal people who like consume news content on a day-to-day basis, but have gone to a conspiratorial place. And I think you have a variety of things happening there. I think that AI certainly has made things a lot scarier when it comes to that. And I see it in our feed, too, from the last time we spoke. The amount of AI slop that's out there, the video that's out there, the fact that the algorithms still reward you for conspiratorial content. I mean, I would have many more followers today if I was just, quote, asking questions, noticing things. Where there's no, like, I don't have to prove I was right. I just have to somehow draw dotted lines between things and, send it your way. And I do, find that to be one of the more concerning trend lines that I've seen only get worse in the last couple of years.
Third assassination attempt in the last couple of years that we know of.
Just on Trump.
And is that a byproduct of Trump because of the way Trump does business, or is that sort of connected to the changes that we're seeing in the media ecosystem, the lack of trust in institutions?
I mean, listen, let's just go top of mind.
Right.
The attack on Pelosi in San Francisco, the attack on Josh Shapiro's house that the guy burned down part of the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, the attempted assassination of 2 Minnesota state legislators, one of them murdered, okay, the attempt on Justice Kavanaugh's life outside his home, and I could keep going and going when, unfortunately, there are a lot of Charlie Kirk. There are a number of examples where, and beyond politics, the UHC, the insurance executive, where Luigi Mangione is accused of it, right? And he was cheered. What I found, again, concerning is that in recent weeks, there were 2 attempts on Sam Altman's house, right? Molotov cocktail.
Right.
And somebody shot bullets into his home.
I didn't hear that.
And that was like twice in a weekend.
Wow.
Obviously, we've seen, people's distrust of AI increase. People worried that AI, and if not AI has already taken their job, that AI will take their job. And so, again, I saw a situation there where I saw a rationalization of violence against executives and people in power. This feeling that people feel that, the normal channels by which one changes things, Congress, various, you can lobby, you can call your congressman, you can try to, reform things in a certain way that, coupled with sort of increasing income inequality and perceptions of income inequality, you add it all in, you put it in a blender, and you have a really concerning situation. But certainly to your point, the fact that Trump came in there, I mean, how did Trump really take his things to the next level on the political scene? it was saying Barack Obama wasn't born in America. Show me the birth certificate. He's a Muslim from Africa.
Yeah.
Right. And then 2020, out of 2020, he still insists that he won that election, despite the fact that several dozen courts have thrown the case out. Right. And so certainly you do hear from the left, like, well, Trump does it.
Right.
So, why do I have to trust their storyline? They lie. So, whatever. I don't believe anything coming out of their mouth. I don't have to prove it. I just don't believe what, the official storyline is.
It feels like it really is the vicious cycle of, I guess if you want to call media, art begets life and life begets art. Like it's this thing where I feel like Trump was somewhat conjured by the public's distrust of institutions.
Yeah.
And he became a reaction to that. And then he exacerbated the problem, which exacerbated it on the other side. So the reaction is bigger, and we just keep going in the,
Sure, we elected a conspiracy theorist president.
Right.
And so now we live in an environment where everybody has conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to defend their viewpoints with data.
So is there any way that institutions, starting with media, which is really the core of our conversation, is there any way that they get it back?
When you say they, who's they?
Okay. It's interesting because I do think it's like Congress. Everybody hates Congress, but they might like their local congressman very much.
They used to. Without that,
now they just hate
we'll
all
have
of
to
them
find out during
systematically.
midterms this November.
Right, exactly. But but it's like you can't survive on a 20% approval rating, right? If that's your
I hate
constituency.
the media, but I
hate the
love
media,
this.
but I love Mosheh.
Yeah.
Or Mo as they think of you. So I think it's probably all media is local to an extent. But I do think when we talk about the institutions, right? The institutions have lost credibility in the way that Congress has lost credibility, right? And I think that you probably get there by one Mosheh at a time, right? But then if you believe that it's rotten, from the top down, then I think it makes it harder to trust what we see as legacy or traditional media is saying to you, and that starts to erode trust in every other institution, right?
Yeah, because ultimately our democracy is one of its foundations is what's our reality? What are the facts? What happened in America today?
Yeah.
And if we have distrust in the major institutions that are bringing us what happened today, where we can't even, we used to be able to agree, like, this is a bottle of water sitting on this table between us while as we tape this podcast.
Right.
We can both agree on that. We live in a reality now, where we not even agree this is a bottle of water because you say
that's not my reality.
Right, your reality is
there is no bottle of water.
There is no. What are you talking about, Mosheh?
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not about having different opinions about the bottle. It's we don't agree on the basics of what happened today. And part of that is the fact that I don't trust the institutions bringing it to me. And part of that is their fault. And part of that is, larger trend lines that are happening in society right now. And part of it is politicians who benefit if you don't trust the media. Right? If the media is grilling them and asking them questions and investigating them, I mean, this is the sort of nefarious part of calling everything fake news, even when it's not fake news, is that, or AI. That's AI. I didn't say that.
And by the way, its other cousin is misinformation, right? And I think depending on who's saying it, they use different terms, but it's all an attack on the credibility of the institution. And many times they come by it honestly. So it's true and it's a lie. And that's what's so damn confusing about this whole thing.
And there's a misunderstanding. These days things are a conspiracy if I don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
I don't understand how the media works. They had anonymous sources. They made those up. And I worked in institutions, CBS and other places, where no, we did not make up anonymous sources. We take very seriously. In fact, we try to get them on the record, but they are sharing us information where they could lose their jobs, and that's why they maintain anonymity. But I think there's a lack of understanding on the part of the media of how that works.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a lack of explanation on the part of the media for, they should explain, why we granted anonymity to this person.
Yeah.
And if they might have an agenda.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I think all of that is super important. And as much as I'm a creator in this new space and there's so many creators and people have found their favorite Substack or their favorite podcast or whatever, a lot of our information still comes to us from the traditional institutions.
I wanted to ask you about that because, I think to a consumer, it is hard to know the difference between what they get from you and what they get from somebody who is pure commentary.
Sure.
and somebody that is actually speaking with a bureau in, multiple geos who's, originating, talking to primary sources and breaking stories and breaking news. Like, do you break news anymore? Or are you...
We will in our interviews.
Uh-huh.
We will sometimes do that on Instagram.
Right.
I think we began as an aggregator for verified information. When I
Right.
say verified information, stuff from reliable sources where I trust the reporter, I trust those institutions.
Well, and I trust you, which is why I think you're a great filter because I trust an individual who I think is filtering in a way that I find credible,
Yeah.
right? And so that seemed to be your basic proposition. As you've gotten bigger, you get interviews that are a score, and then you'll start to develop your own stories out of that. But
Right.
But in effect,
and by the way, we've built a large enough following where I do hear from government officials and people on Capitol Hill and people in various companies who are like, hey, I saw you reported this. I happen to work at X company. Like, you got this right, or you didn't get this right. Like, you missed the story here.
Right.
And then I'll be like, can I use that? And they're like, yeah. So, like, I think that ultimately it's sort of a hybrid of, sort of what we can deem smart aggregation plus original reporting.
Yeah. And one of the things I was thinking about, the lines are so blurry and up is down and left is right. The last time we had this conversation, it was maybe tail end of COVID. And I think somebody who we both have a relationship with, which is Barry Weiss, she was running the Free Press, which was new. And she had just kind of given the finger to the New York Times and said, you guys are, biased.
Well, I would say the New York Times sort of gave the finger to her first.
Is that true? I thought they gave it to her editor and then she walked. I thought she walked as a byproduct.
All right, yeah. So you can.
It was in yeah. All good. But I think bottom line is, she was the insurgency.
Correct.
And the New York Times was the institution that was losing a lot of credibility and a lot of trust. And fast forward to 2026, she's now in she's in the Walter Cronkite chair.
Yeah.
And she is the institution, and she is getting attacked severely for accusations of bias. And the New York Times, A.G. Salzberger, is now running messaging openly saying, support other journalists, support independence, support fact-based journalism wherever you can find it.
Yeah.
And not even trying to push the Times. And frankly, if you look at some of the work they've done through DealBook or other platforms, you see people from the Times now sitting down with Ben Shapiro and Andrew Schultz and people you never really would have seen them to affiliate with. And so,
Sure, I was at DealBook last year where he was sitting there with Alice Cooper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like, how did we go from one to the other? Is it just another pendulum? And is that an indication of what you were saying earlier about how like traditional media is starting to catch on a little bit?
Right. And so they have a few different routes if I'm traditional media. I can develop my own talent.
Yep.
Or I can scan the landscape for who's talented out there and how can I borrow a little bit of their trust and their relationship with their audience and their potential growth. Yeah. Right? Am I growing my own Joe Rogan or Barry Weiss or Free Press? Yeah. Or am I buying them? Yeah. And so in the case of Paramount, you saw that they, decided that no, I think we can acquire that talent in Barry as well as Free Press. It's interesting who their audience is, where they're getting traction, etc. And bring a little bit of that DNA and that cachet and that foresight about where things are going to a legacy institution, the Columbian Broadcasting System, right? And it's a place that I spent a decade at CBS, that I was put in charge of digital and streaming in 2014, when internally, they would refer to it as Mosheh's internet thing, a streaming channel. Streaming channel that we were building at the time for like Roku and Apple TV. And we were like, what the hell are you doing? And I was like, you've never done 24-hour news here. You failed at it. We're going to figure out a 24-hour news channel. We're going to reach new audiences. The median age of an evening news watcher is 67. I think it's like 70 today. The only thing, and then I ended up being brought back into broadcast news to run the evening news, which was an incredible job, but like the most limiting, frustrating job I ever had at CBS. And I could do like 8 to 9 stories a night. I had 20 minutes after commercials. Whereas in streaming, I'm like, we're going to go 4 hours on this. Or like, let's do a deep dive on X, Y, and Z. And we all know what streaming is like. But 10 years ago, like there was a lot of impediments internally at CBS to it. And that is why CBS has been, behind on a variety of things. So fast forward, multiple owners, multiple presidents. I departed in 2019. And I think, they're like, okay, whatever we've been doing has not been able to sustain itself and not gotten us to the place that we want. So let's bring in someone with new ideas about, where to take things. It comes against the backdrop that we've been discussing, which is like, such distrust in the media. Like the latest numbers are whatever numbers you want to look at, somewhere between 70 to 80% of Americans do not trust the media.
Yeah.
The media. Okay, that's only 1 out of 5 Americans, and they are probably over the age of 70. So you have a generational issue there. And so the thing is, you got to look at it like, okay, we do have this brand. We've done incredible things. We have this incredible archive. But how are we going to reach people moving forward here before we basically have to close up shop?
Right.
And so you got to try people who've done interesting, innovative things. And, that's what I imagine is happening over there. And so
is it fair, all the criticism that she's getting? People are really...
scrutinizing every single
everything
move that she makes.
Well, and especially they're saying she killed the story. I don't know if she killed the story. I don't know what happened, but I know that there are a lot of people that I think were licking their chops to come at her. I also
she's getting more scrutiny than any other media boss right now. Right. Okay. And that's despite the fact that there's other media entities that have much higher ratings and much larger influence.
Okay.
But ultimately, for a whole variety of reasons,
Yeah.
they are scrutinizing every single thing that she does every single day. Right?
Yeah.
There's like for CBS for a long time, like no one was paying attention to them.
Right.
Now they're paying attention to like every single second of every single show.
Right.
And some, don't have the best interest of CBS at heart. They just like want to scrutinize it. And so I think, listen, there's fair criticism of anybody. Right?
Sure.
Criticize any of us in the media.
But it's a little outsized in this case.
It's completely outsized,
Yeah.
right? They're taking things that, like, I know, having been there for 10 years, that are like, oh, this is a clear sign of that. No, it isn't. It was a sign of incompetence on the part of one person with, like, no particular agenda.
Yeah.
I think that place is a particularly challenging place, having been there. You have entrenched interests. We used to refer to it jokingly with the term deep state. There's a deep state at CBS that is against change and knows that if they fight change long enough, that person will leave and they will survive, like they always have. I had people there, Dan, when I got to some of the shows, who were literally hired by Walter Cronkite.
Wow.
Okay? And Cronkite left in 82. Sorry, not left. He was forcibly retired in the early 80s because he turned 65, and CBS at the time had a rule that you must retire at 65.
Wow.
So, and we said, everyone there still holds him in such high esteem, Cronkite. I was like, you guys forced out Cronkite. Number one. And number two...
And then didn't they force out Rather?
Well, Rather sort of forced himself out with the whole Bush debacle. They had a show called 60 Minutes 2, and then they found that they pursued a story regarding Bush in the military that turned out not to be true.
Yeah.
And so as part of that scandal, 22 years ago, they forced Rather out. Remarkably, Dan Rather making inroads, has a huge newsletter. He's in the new media space.
He's a social media influencer.
Darling in his 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
So the point of it all is that I came there's entrenched interest in getting change at that organization, despite the recognition that everyone knows they need to change, is incredibly difficult, like any institution that's been around a long time. There are people who are protective of their own jobs, who understand that you need to adapt, but don't like the way you have to adapt. I came in, I was like, the expectation these days in cable news, and this was like in 28, in the mid 20-teens. Yeah. Cable news has now been around for 30 to 40 years, depending on the network. And I was like, they got producers over there, they're doing multiple things a day, they're doing this, that, and the other thing. And they're like, well, I do one thing a week. I do 2 things a week. That's the way things work here. Well, I was like, we can't be competitive anyway, in that way. And so, I think that's just one example of the many challenges that they face there. And the fact that you can't grow an audience on linear television, despite the fact that is where the core of your money still comes in. So you have this challenge and it's not just Barry, it's in any of these organizations where like, how do you preserve your evening news and your morning broadcast, which bring in hundreds of millions of dollars a year?
Yeah, you better win on YouTube.
While also building the lifeboat.
Right.
You're on the sinking ship. You know the ship is sinking. Literally, like victory these days in network news or cable news is losing the fewest amount of viewers versus your competitor.
Right.
You're not gaining anymore.
Right.
So while the ship is sinking, ensure that like you're bailing out water as quickly as possible while building that ship for the future.
What is your favorite podcast other than the Media Roundtable? Is it Joe Rogan, Call Her Daddy, Mel Robbins, Crime Junkie, Amy Poehler, Smartless, Pivot? What are you into? It's such an interesting dinner table topic to ask people. You learn a lot, and people are so passionate about this medium. They're so passionate about it. And where do you listen? Where do you watch? Is it YouTube? Is it Apple? Is it Spotify? You are in the center of what we do as an organization. That is our business. We are Oxford Road, and we help some of the leading brands in the world be successful advertising in these channels. We're the largest specialist that exists. We buy the most ads in this channel. So we are actually powering this industry. We buy over $500 million of ads per year for wonderful brands like Shopify, Wayfair, DraftKings, Masterclass, Chime, Quince, AG1, Mint Mobile. We're interrupting all your favorite podcasts, including not just the usual suspects, but there are thousands in the long tail that are great niche shows with really loyal audiences. And what happens is when you advertise there, the host really only gets to pick one in your category. And so if you're the first there, you can kind of lock up that relationship, that annuity, and be recommended to those audiences for years. So it's a powerful space. And it's one where we have the privilege of leading right now. We've got lots of great ways to de-risk our clients' campaigns, like our Orbit data set that's getting close to $2 billion of performance data. So we know what's going to work in advance. We also have Audiolytics, which are our proprietary ad grading system to make sure every word counts and is always getting optimized, and then de-risked through our brand safety taxonomy as well, to make sure we watch out for your brand values. If you want to win in this channel, and you've got something to say, you got a product worth talking about, and you want to get into this trust economy, and you're serious about it, you really want to be a part of it over the long haul, we'd love to talk to you. OxfordRoad.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter if you like free stuff. It's called The Influencer, and it's free. We also have a lot of good thought pieces if you want to learn at OxfordRoad.com. That is OxfordRoad.com. I see it in radio too, and it's a really thankless spot to be in, and especially if you have to deal with quarterly earnings, and you're trying to satisfy both masters, because they know where they got to put their chips now. It's all a settled issue, but like still trying to salvage what you had when the majority of your revenue is coming from there. It's
look what CBS did. Look, right? You had to make the hard call this year to cut CBS radio. The foundational thing of CBS.
Right, exactly.
Where Edward R. Murrow and the guys in London talked about the Blitz.
Yeah.
And you found out like what was left of the revenue there, and you preserve it because it's who we are, our identity. But ultimately, it doesn't make business sense in 2026.
So, and in your business that you've created, you have a very successful now news organization, very credible, and you've grown it. You crossed the 1 million reach threshold. So, congratulations on that. How hard is it, and how rare is it to do that with, I want to say without political bias, but at least a good faith, relentless pursuit of no political bias, right? What's that like?
It's challenging. I think, there's two easy strategies to growth these days because of the sort of, for lack of a better term, perverse model of the algorithm, right? What does it reward? It rewards partisanship, fear, and sensation.
Yeah.
And there are times when if I cut down a news clip of Trump or somebody else down to 8 seconds, 12 seconds,
Yeah.
I would get much further reach because it would reinforce the worldviews of one side or both sides, right? But I'm like, well, the proper clip is not the 12-second clip. It's actually the 90-second clip where you hear the context. And the first 15 seconds might be oh my God, he said that. But then he eventually gets around to the larger point, which then sorts of takes away from the oomph of the first 12 seconds. Yeah. And so ultimately, right away, like I have lost, a huge amount of views on something.
You have to take a long view. You have to do the delayed gratification.
Correct.
Which it turns out is actually a very precious asset that you're building and investing in. But you have to be very disciplined to do it, I would imagine. And
it's tough. I mean, listen.
How much of what's created is that? And how much of what consumed is that?
And I've seen, by the way, in the past just over a year since Trump was inaugurated a second time, people who were in my space, in sort of like we pursue nonpartisan information for everybody, go fully oppositional, go fully resistance. And their numbers have grown accordingly. Listen, everyone's entitled to whatever they want to do. But unfortunately, we live in a world where, on social media in particular, you will grow best by freaking people out, creating fear, leading to people to like fight or fully agree with you in the comments. And I hear all the time, I know as somebody who's followed me for a while, you're familiar. Like sometimes I'll post one thing and like within 5 minutes, like both worldviews will decide that I was against them on this. Like, How could you post this? You have Trump derangement syndrome. Right. How could you post this? You're being an apologist and you're really a fascist. How did you two? And then I'm like, you two need to get in a room and decide like why that clip.
By the way, have you, just as a human, have you been able to fully like compartmentalize yourself away from that, or does it ever get?
No, I'm a human. This is my, at the end of the day, I started this on my personal account. No, I have to prevent myself from like starting to fight with people in the comments. But I'll get defensive. They're like, oh, you're super defensive. I was like, yeah, because you're like attacking my credibility. And like, I feel that like, do you understand like why I posted? Anyway, it's a big, sometimes it'll actually be really interesting because somebody will come around who like began as an attack. And sometimes I just realize like there's no winning in this situation. But yeah, I mean, I'm a human like anybody else. And for the most part, I can compartmentalize. But yeah, sometimes it like bums me out if like people interpreted something one way or another. And so that's sort of the challenge of doing what we're doing, which is we are the turtle, not the hare.
Right.
And we hope that like that credibility will ultimately, preserve an audience that's very connected and will trust us that long term, this is a place where you can get good information and that your family members or friends or colleagues who might have different political points of view will both be like, you know what, I feel like we go to Mosheh to like verify where things are at. And we've gotten some really powerful comments, probably thousands of messages at this point from people who are like, you allow me and my husband to actually discuss the news of the day. Yeah. You allow me and my sister to like reconnect after a few years. Like you're the one source that we can both agree that like, okay, this is actually what happened. And I don't trade that, trading that for a few 100,000 more followers on Instagram is not worthwhile to me.
Yeah. And I think, kind of leading into what I think will be our final topic here is, you said it. It all comes down to trust, right? We are in a world where trust is an increasingly rare, increasingly important, and it is the only thing that's going to save us.
Interesting example, Dan, there is last week, I pride myself on being able to like decipher AI and like never post AI stuff. And I was moving too quickly last week just because of the nature of things. And like I approved a video to go up. It was related to, there's a story out of France. They're investigating how people are manipulating Polymarket. And like you can make bets on like whether Paris is going to hit like whatever, 20 degrees Celsius today. And they have weather monitors, temperature monitors around the world. And somebody found a way to manipulate one of the weather monitors to take the temperature up several degrees so they could win like 30 grand on Kalshi. Or sorry, not Kalshi, on Polymarket. And so
it used to just be professional baseball teams. And now
exactly.
And
now it's like, what can I bet on? And none of the other weather monitors, so like clearly somebody manipulated this. And so anyway, that story came out, and then at the same time, a video popped on social media of somebody taking a hairdryer what looked like a hairdryer to like heat up the thing. And I was like, oh, this. Put two and two together. It was sort of grainy, but whatever, and we posted it. Mm-hmm. The story is real. The video was AI, and so we posted it. And some people in the comments are like, Mosheh, AI. And some people's in the comments like, watch him delete this and not like mention it. Like a lot of influencers.
And you did the retraction, didn't you?
I did the retraction and then made a video.
Yeah.
Saying, hey guys,
yeah.
we got got.
Yeah.
We got taken.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go above and beyond to like make a point to like tell you when I screwed up. And I think that's super important in this era of distrust, which so many people, will just like take down that video and then pretend it never happened.
Yeah. Well, in a way, the things you're talking about, actually trying to fight against your own human impulses to advance the narrative you want, trying to defend what's real without being defensive, and actually being willing to, acknowledge and print a fucking retraction in 2026
on social media.
On social media. I mean, it's equivalent to like following what I think the Hippocratic Oath is for a journalist. The problem is I don't know that journalists have a Hippocratic Oath,
and most creators are not journalists.
Well,
there's no oath for them,
but they may not know it.
Yeah,
I think, because the problem is the audience doesn't know the difference. And if the audience thinks you're a journalist, just because you don't think you're a journalist, does it matter? It's like, the comedian who hurt somebody, they were just making a joke, but their jokes do have consequences, right? Yeah. And so do you go, well, they're a comedian, that's not what they're supposed to do? Well, it's sort of, I guess if you look at the impact of it, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And people do not delineate between your brand of journalism. People that are discerning may know your brand of journalism, but generally speaking, they do not know the difference between, we used to use Alex Jones as a shorthand, but now there's an army of them.
Sure.
And they're not labeled. There is nothing. And the whole notion of identifying misinformation came and went in a period of 2 or 3 years. They tried, and then there's...
Zuckerberg and company don't want to be in that game anymore.
Nobody's going to be in that game because nobody can agree on what it is, like we were talking about with the water bottle, right? So taking this back to the commercial world... Mm-hmm. The reason that our business is successful at Oxford Road, the reason we have a business, is not because we traffic in impressions, but because we're in the business of putting brands in between a host and the audience. And the greater the trust in the host who recommends the brand, the greater the impact on that brand because the audience trusts them, and there is this virtuous cycle, mm-hmm. right? The commercial value is predicated on trust. The value to our culture of a creator or a journalist being truthful, being objective, being able to disclose when they're wrong, it's all predicated on trust. We are here, by the way, I should have mentioned, we are here as you talked about at the top of the conversation, like the merger of media and brands. The Trade Desk has hosted us in their studio through their media entity, which is The Current. That's who's providing these microphones for us right now. Thank you very much to the Trade Desk and The Current. But we're at Possible here in Miami. And I guarantee, however many sessions we are in over the next 3 days, the influencers, creators, and trust will keep coming up over and over again. But I don't know if anybody has a clue how to actually achieve it, or how to standardize it, or how to reward it, because like you said, the algorithms are trained to do the opposite. The system is sort of fucked in terms of the way that it's wired and what feeds it and what makes it grow. And I think somebody that's got a long view and a lot of discipline and understands the tenets of journalism that we had for maybe 100 years in this country, like you, are able to do that. But you're one in thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, based on the volume of creators, content creators who just vomit what they want.
And I'm also only as good as the algorithm will expose me to the, audience.
So, question is, what do we do about it? And how do you go, like, one at a time, and setting a good example is one piece of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything bigger? that could be done? Is there are there standards that could be enforced? You know, I've been a believer in nutrition labels.
Yeah. Right, media nutrition labels.
That's been my big thing.
And certainly there's organizations like Adfantes and others, right, that have tried to
who we're invested in.
Who are trying to do like proper, as scientific as you can get, assessment of bias and reliability when it comes to outlets.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the public is going to like who the public's going to like, right? Like my father watches 6 hours a day of Fox News. That's what he likes, right? He's not like going to the Adfantes chart to be like, well, maybe I should like watch less of Jesse Waters and more of, Dana Perino, whatever.
Do you think if there was like a skull and crossbones at the beginning of it they had to show, would that like get them to think twice maybe?
I think
they do what they did on the cigarettes, would it
people
matter?
People like who people like. There are people who, like you look at the top 10 podcasts on Apple Podcasts right now, and Candace Owens is there and Tucker Carlson is there. And
are they not credible?
I'll leave it to everyone. My point is, there are organizations and individuals of various levels of responsibility and reliability and bias getting millions and millions of listeners and views every day, right? Yeah. And some would argue maybe some are doing certain things for money, but like I'll leave that to everyone to sort of chat about. I do think that living in this creator space, one of the big issues is monetization.
Right.
And if I am not making as much as the highly partisan, highly sensational sites, because I'm not going to, off of the clicks, then it's something that I know you've been working on for a number of years, which is brands that are spending money should invest their money wisely.
Yeah.
That they shouldn't just be cutting checks to the organizations or the podcasts or the creators who just have the largest number of views.
Yep.
That they should be rewarding people who are actually contributing to responsible information and dialogue and frankly trying to preserve and maybe improve our democracy.
I think that's the core of all of it. And then I think, once we solve that problem, I think level 2 is I want there to be a parallel type of filtering for what creators do on behalf of brands, because I think they're at least as clumsy in their filtering and what they're willing to recommend to audiences.
Sure.
And if they're not going to filter the news information they're going to share, they're not going to filter the brands that they recommend, but that has consequences too, right? And I think that the purity of your business is, when you have something that is truly filtered and important that you share that people can trust. And in my business, it is the same. It's just not the information that people are making most of their decisions on, but they are making purchasing decisions on them. So I think it's important, and I think it degrades the value of the asset, which you do endorsements, and
and I need to navigate that very carefully because certainly there are people who've said, I can no longer follow you because you endorse this product or endorse this company. That there are certainly organizations, and you know this because we've had these discussions.
Yeah.
We have clients that we get through Oxford Road, or ads that we get through Oxford Road. It's like, I can't do that one, but I can do this one. Or I need to pause that ad.
You shouldn't get that through us, but others maybe.
Yeah, no.
I mean, honestly, we do try to filter. I really,
or it's not right for my audience. It's, I'm not here to like criticize any particular brand, but it just might not be the right brand for my audience.
Yeah.
Also, based on the fact that I might have promoted a competitor or a different product, or that sort of thing. So.
You've got to filter. You've got to filter too, because it's your credibility either way. Okay, so what's next for Mo News?
Right now we have a few like major agenda items. Our revenue model is split. We have both partnership revenue with ads, and then we have paid subscriptions. And so we're continuing to grow paid subscriptions. We offer a whole service for Mo News Premium, additional content, analysis, etc. How are we reaching those? How are we growing from our top of the funnel and converting into paid is super important because those folks long term are much more reliable than the ad cycle can be, right? Then secondarily, continuing to grow partnerships and being creative in that way. And when I say creative, we're also doing stuff that feels organic to our brand, that engages more in storytelling if we can, than just sort of like straight promotional stuff. And then like as a brand itself, how do we continue to grow onto the channels where people are consuming? I think one big focus of ours this year is YouTube, recognizing it is the largest media brand. We have been on it for a couple of years, but it hasn't really been a primary focus. And that's where we're going. Another agenda item, and I have a number of these because I never stop, is like less Mo in Mo News. Like I've built a brand. It's sort of like I watched a documentary a couple years ago on like Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
oh yeah,
her entire
that's
brand
a great one.
Was predicated around Martha.
Right.
And when Martha went to jail,
stay off the SEC's shit list.
Yeah, I'm very careful with my investment advisor, my financial advisor, in terms of what companies we're buying into. But the larger point there was, I want a brand that's not just me.
Right.
That stands for something larger. Mm-hmm. So are there other creators we can bring under this umbrella?
Yeah.
Are there other voices we can bring in?
Or can you take over a major media conglomerate, a traditional one that's looking to...
Sure. I mean, there's the sort of the new model, right? The Paramount Free Press model.
Right.
Does somebody want Mo News to be a part of their model and Mo to be part of it?
Yeah, which one of those do you want to eat? That's the question I have. We'll talk offline.
Be eaten by. But we're totally, I'm open to all conversations in this world. It's a small world, but it's interesting. So, those are a few of our primary things. And then frankly, Dan, it's ensuring that we are properly and aggressively finding ways to integrate AI into both our news gathering operation while still keeping a human face and human eyes on anything that goes out. And also ensuring that as the audience continues to adapt in the way they get their news, still AI is still LLMs are still pretty small when it comes to news, but certainly they are, making that a priority. How are we ensuring that we stay competitive?
Yeah.
Because the last, we know how this cycle works. You're on the cutting edge of innovation until you're not.
Yeah.
And so how are we adapting there in a smart way as a small newsroom? Because the era of building newsrooms with hundreds and hundreds of reporters is over.
Yeah. So
how are we using AI as a force multiplier, but not a replacement for what we do while preserving trust?
Right. Well, quite an ambitious agenda, and we'll continue to partner with you on it. Where can people find you?
It's anything you want to know about Mo News is on our website, mo.news, but you should follow us on Instagram. That is our 24/7 feed. Just search Mo News on Instagram. We have a daily morning podcast out every morning, 4 a.m. Eastern. If you're a late person on the West Coast, it's out at 1 a.m. Pacific. That's out every morning. We have an afternoon Substack, Mo News, the Mo Newsletter, out every day around 5 p.m. Eastern, all available to all of you. And then, of course, there's the premium stuff, too. But the newsletter, the podcast, the Instagram, and now everything on the Mo News YouTube channel, those are a few places you can go.
Well, thank you, Mosheh, for coming back to the Media Roundtable. And don't
Literally
forget...
today...
It is a roundtable.
At a round
table.
Well,
I got a round table at my office because I was doing it on a rectangle table, and I felt like I was being very disingenuous and really defeating the whole trust.
How can we
the
trust
whole
you
thing was a
if
lie.
the round table is not literally
exactly.
a round table?
So it's a problem. So anyway, this podcast is brought to you by Oxford Road. You know what we want? We want you to succeed in podcasting, audio, and creator media. And we believe that influence is powerful and that it comes with a responsibility to advance voices that don't just entertain but edify, like the one we talked to today. If you want to align your brand values with extraordinary business outcomes, visit oxfordroad.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. It's called The Influencer. We'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback for us, info@mediaroundtable.com. Thank you to Mosheh and to Haley, Bianca, Rocio, Kyle, Everett, Ezra, Neil, the team at Podcast One, the team at The Current, and the Trade Desk. As always, influence responsibly.